Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Planning Commission meeting. It is 4:30 on Thursday, February 27th, 2025. I have a couple items of business because we have a large crowd. Would you all please make sure your cell phones are turned off? Because I do not like the ringing. And secondly, if you have something to say, and I'm sure people will have something to say, step up to the microphone over there and state your name and address, and please speak into the microphone. Thank you. First item on the agenda is public hearing on the McKinley Whitaker interim use permit application.
All right. John Nisley, planner with the City of New Ulm. So this interim use permit application is to allow a myofascial release therapy business out of a single-family residential home located in the RT2 zoning district. The applicant for this application is Daniel McKinley. The property owner is Samantha Whitaker. The legal description is Lot 9, Block 54, south of Center Street, with the street address of 1121 South Minnesota Street. The property is generally located north of 12th North Street and east of South Minnesota Street, kind of in the same neighborhood as Domeyer's in that area. A deadline for a decision on this application is April 2nd, 2025. The comprehensive plan land use designation for the property is low-density residential, and surrounding land use designations to the north, south, east, and west are also all low-density residential. Zoning designation again for this property is RT2, that's traditional neighborhood, single and two-family residence district. Currently, the site is a single-family residence. Current area land uses, again to the north, south, east, and west, are all single-family residences. Notice was provided to all property owners within 350 feet of the subject property, and then published in the Journal on February 15th of 2025. And as you can see in the staff report, I received 2 phone calls from neighbors inquiring about what's being proposed here and asking for more information on the project. One had suggested that the Planning Commission consider requiring any customer parking for the therapy business to be in the back of the property. And then I did have one email that was in opposition to the request, and that is included in your staff reports. So the intent of allowing an interim use permit is to allow a land use for a limited period of time that reasonably utilizes the property in a manner that is not otherwise consistent with the comprehensive plan nor permitted in the applicable zoning district. It's to provide the city with a reasonable degree of discretion in determining suitability of a certain designated uses for specified zoning districts. To allow a use that is presently unacceptable, not permitted within the zoning district, and within anticipated development, may not be acceptable in the future. And then finally, to allow a temporary use of a property until a particular date, until the occurrence of a particular event, or until zoning regulations no longer permit it. Interim use permits for the City of New Ulm are relatively new. They were incorporated into the city's zoning regulations about 3 years ago. So we haven't received too many of these yet. So approval of an interim use at a location within a zoning classification does not mean that the same interim use can be conducted on any other parcel with specific zoning classification. So that means if we were to allow myofascial release therapy at this property, doesn't mean that 4 houses down, it's permitted there as well. It's specific to the applicant and that property. Each application for an interim use permit, again, will be individually reviewed on its own merits, and the facts surrounding the subject property will determine the appropriateness of the proposed use. So since creating the interim use permit regulations in New Ulm, 5 permits have been issued. Our first one was a residential property that was for woodworking in a detached accessory structure that was Kala Woodworking. They ultimately moved into their own commercial space and have their own business that's up and running. A residential property to allow float tank therapy business, and that has since ceased operations at that location. A residential property to allow gunsmithing and sales by Brett Meyer. That is still in operation in a detached accessory structure. Another residential property for dog grooming, Megan Swenstead, That is also still in operation. And then a residentially zoned property, commercial building, the old House of Nutrition building that was recently approved for a bakery by Holly Schaefer. I have in here the review criteria for an interim use permit, but we're going to be going through each one of those items in the findings of fact. So if you don't mind, I'd skip over that part for right now. So the purpose of the RT2 zoning district is to provide for low-density 1 and 2 unit dwellings generally located in the grid pattern along with directly related complementary uses. The applicant is proposing to operate a myofacial release therapy business out of the basement of an existing single-family residence. The location of the proposed business would be in an unused bedroom of the basement, in the basement of the house. So myofacial release therapy is very similar to other forms of massage therapy, but the focus is on the joints, muscles, and facial muscles. Hope I got that right. The applicant anticipates that they will only be taking one client at a time for this type of therapy. The applicant also states that they have adequate parking on the property and an additional vehicle from a client can be parked in the existing driveway at the rear of the property off of the alley. The applicant has requested the interim use permit for a period of 5 years. So a little bit of site history and information. This is a single-family home that was constructed in 1925. The home is located on our typical grid lots, which are 50 feet in width by 165 feet in depth, and was platted as part of the original city plat. Our comprehensive plan recognizes that we should provide land use flexibility and understand that the community periodically experiences shifts. As such, it's important to build some flexibility into the city's land use designations and decisions, and land use and policies should allow for contemporary and flexible regulations for considerations of new development and redevelopment proposals and concepts. It also would be more responsive to future market conditions and demands. So our comprehensive plan also recognizes that we want to keep our existing neighborhoods, residential neighborhoods, as existing residential neighborhoods and not change those into different types of land uses. So those are considerations to take into effect with this application. So in order to recommend approval of the permit, the commission will need to determine that the requests meet the standards provided in section 2.4E of the zoning ordinance. Again, these standards can be found on the interim use permit findings of facts worksheet, which we'll go through here in a little bit. And then the planning commission and then city council must make affirmative findings on all the criteria in order to grant the interim use permit. The applicant has the burden of proof to show that all the criteria above have been satisfied. With this staff report, there are 8 attachments, and I'll pull them up on the screen here so we can all take a look at them. So the first attachment is the application by Mr. McKinley. He provided a map showing the parking in the back here, the location of where the business will take place within the home, and then he also showed some street parking up in front of his home as well. Here is attachment number 2, and this is the location of the property. As you can see, it's on the south end of New Ulm between 12th South and 11th South, and just east of Minnesota. Here's the zoning map. You can see that this property is surrounded by other RT2 zoned properties. Here is a site map created by staff, and again, it just highlights the rear parking in the property off the alley. I included a few photos of the house. Here's the front of the house. Here's the rear of the house. You can barely see it, but there's a walkout basement from which the applicant has told me this is likely where the customers will enter into the home. And then we have the staff reported findings of facts, which we'll go through in just a bit. And lastly, the email that I received, and I'll just read this out loud for the record. My name is Carol Weiberg. My husband, Bruce Weiberg, and I are residents at 1114 South Minnesota in New Ulm. They've been long-term residents in this neighborhood for many years and have seen a lot of change in the area. It's a great, quiet neighborhood. We experience a lot of traffic on Minnesota Street, and with this in mind, we are currently opposed to any residential business occurring in the neighborhood. With this in mind, the new current residents of such address filing application should indeed keep in mind a professional building space, not in our neighborhood, and keep it professional with such business intent. If the applicant purchased said residence to do so as listed, you have the wrong view to disrupt residential area, existence of our area and the concerning neighbors on said block. Thank you for your time, Carol. I would note that after discussing if there be any changes to the structure of the home whatsoever for conducting this business, the applicant has told me there will be no structural changes to the home. It's an existing bedroom that's being unused. If it were to go back, if the business were to close, it can easily go right back to being residential use for another bedroom in the home. So staff's evaluation. The applicant, staff believes the applicant complies with the standards for granting the interim use permit. We believe there's minimal traffic generated from this type of business at this location. The city has permitted interim uses for similar businesses in residential areas such as hair salons, dog grooming, float tank therapy businesses, etc., and have had no issues with those to date. The granting of an interim use permit does not permanently grant the use on the property. Rather, it's for a specified period of time. And in this case, staff would support the maximum of 5 years. And after 5 years, the permit can be reviewed again, and issues that arise can be addressed again at that time. The proposed business at this location, staff does not believe will impact neighboring properties. And the home will remain the same as a single-family dwelling into the future. The applicant has not proposed to change the home structurally. We do recommend 5 conditions. 1, that the use shall comply with the standards found in section 2.4E of the zoning ordinance. 2, that the interim use permit approval is for a period of 5 years. Number 3, that the use will not expand nor be moved from the location identified in the application. Number 4, that the applicant property owner will pay the cost to record the resolution approving the interim use permit with the Brown County Recorder's Office. And then number 5, if the property were to change ownership, the interim use permit shall be null and void. And if the new owner wishes to continue the use at the site, they'll be required to apply for a new interim use permit. And we had 2 potential motions for you to review, 1 to approve the application and 1 to deny the application. And that concludes the staff report.
I have one question. Condition 5, are you changing the site as a bakery?
Yeah, no, this should be just, that was a typo.
Okay.
For the
I just
massage
wanted to make
therapy
sure that it
business.
didn't stay in there.
Right.
Thank you.
We'll change that, yep.
That concludes
I've got a couple of questions, if I may. They're sort of general questions
for the city or for the applicant?
for the city.
Okay.
And this, I'm just trying to still catch up with land use regulations. I understand that there are home occupations that are allowed just as an accessory use, but some of them, like this, take an interim use permit. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So in this type of a home occupation, are you allowed to have a sign on the property, or?
So in a residential zoning district, they'd be allowed to have 6 square feet.
Okay, like any resident for it?
Yep.
Okay. And then the other thing is just a question about parking. Is on-street parking normally allowed? I mean, it's there, it's public. Okay, so this is just a special request that in this case, the neighbor would like to see the parking in the back.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I have.
Yeah. It wasn't called out in the conditions either. So.
Right. I didn't see it as a condition 6, so is that something that we're considering putting on there, or the applicant seems to be okay with it?
Mm-hmm.
But we'll wait until then to ask that question. And then my last question for you, John, is what happens after 5 years? Is it an automatic reissue, or is there a new public hearing, or how does that work?
It would come back to the planning commission for review.
Okay,
Yeah, the process starts all over again.
okay. Thank you.
Is there any other questions for the city? Are there questions for the owner? No? Okay.
I would ask the owner if it's okay if we attach that condition, since that's a neighbor would like to see parking on the property only.
Is the owner here? Is it Dan?
owner is not here. I'm the applicant.
Oh,
I'm fine with that.
okay, would you step up to the microphone, state your name and answer, and address, please, and then answer the question?
My name is Daniel McKinley. My address is 1121 South Minnesota Street. And I would be fine with having my clients park in the back at the driveway.
I do have a question about that myself.
Sure.
I see there is a side door access to the basement. So if I didn't want to park, is it fine if I come in the side door? Because there's a slope in the backyard?
So it's actually going to be a lot flatter to just go into the walkout basement.
Okay.
I had labeled the side door because if you were to park in the front, it might make more sense to come in that way. Then you got stairs to go down and it's
Okay, okay.
just- it doesn't really make sense, but it's a second option.
I was concerned of being an old person, having to walk in winter up incline, but if there's no incline, then it's probably fine.
There's probably less of an incline in that
Okay.
way, and I'd obviously be keeping it shoveled and
Okay,
salted.
okay, thank you. Sure. Is there any other questions for? Well,
Just a note, it's a public street and public parking. I don't think we can realistically tell him that he's got to have his parking in the rear. I mean,
My concern too, can we
I don't think we,
require that? I don't think it's the right thing to do.
yeah. I mean, you can encourage it for your customers, and I think that's appropriate. But I don't think it's appropriate for us to dictate he has to tell his customers to park in the alley.
And we
public
can go
street.
through, we can discuss that in the finding of facts too, when we talk about this.
Yeah.
Did you have any question?
No, I
Dave?
disagree with that statement.
I would note that in the past, when we've received similar types of requests, and this goes back 30 years, we've had similar conditions where we requested that parking take place on the property.
Again, though, he has no ability to enforce that. So I don't know why putting a condition that he can enforce as a business owner, why we would do that. That seems overreaching in my opinion.
That's one of the reasons I asked the question about the side entrance, because of the access ability of it, but, okay. Are there any other questions from the audience? Anybody else? Please step up to the microphone, state your name and address. Thank you, Daniel.
I'm Jerry Kokesh, 1115 South Minnesota, 2 doors down.
Okay.
If this parking was an issue, but you got it taken care of. If this gets rezoned, does that affect the price of my house? I might have to sell, I'm getting old. Will this lower the price of my house being the block is rezoned, or is it just one house?
Dave is going to
Okay.
answer.
This will not rezone his property. This just provides to him an additional use of the property. So it remains a residentially zoned area.
Okay, so it won't affect the price of my house if I sell it? Shouldn't?
It shouldn't.
Okay. What was it? I had another question, I can't think of it. Okay, thank you.
Well, we're going to do the finding of facts, and if you have another question, please feel free to come back with it. Are there any other audience members that wish to address us? I'm going to do the finding of facts in the part of the public hearing. Okay, to allow a myofascial release therapy business to operate in a residence located in an R2 traditional neighborhood, single and two-family residence zoning district. Will the use adversely impact nearby properties through nuisance, noise, traffic, dust, odor, or unsightliness, and will not otherwise adversely impact the health, safety, and welfare of the community?
Staff responded, no, that there is no anticipated major change in traffic, noise, or dust that will be noticed in the neighborhood due to the proposed use. This use is similar to other home occupations that are permitted with an interim use permit.
Did we agree?
Agree.
Agree.
Yes.
Thank you. Will the use adversely impact implementation of the comprehensive plan?
Staff responded, no, there is no change to the zoning or land use designation in the comprehensive plan. If permitting this interim use. The use is located within an existing room in the home and can be easily converted back to a residential use when it's done.
Is the date, event, or change in circumstances that will terminate the interim use identified with certainty?
Staff responded yes, that the applicant requested a 5-year time period, and staff would also recommend that the permit be allowed for a period of 5 years.
Are we agreeing with them?
Yes.
Agree.
Does the applicant agree to all conditions that the city council deems appropriate to allow the use, including a condition that the owner may be required to provide an appropriate financial surety to cover the cost of removing the interim use and any interim structures upon the expiration of the interim use permit?
Staff responded yes, that the applicant would agree with the proposed conditions of the interim use permit, and there is no financial surety applicable to this request.
Do we agree?
Agree.
Agree.
Will the proposed use hinder the permanent development of the site?
Staff responded no, that the use requires no permanent changes to be made to the building. The room that the myofascial release therapy is taking place in can easily be converted back to a residential use.
We agree.
Yes.
Will the use create an excessive burden on existing parks, schools, streets, and other public facilities which serve or are proposed to serve the area?
Staff responded no, that there are no public facilities in the proximity to the property. There is also no anticipated negative impact on city streets or utilities from the use.
Agree?
Agree.
Has the applicant signed a consent agreement stating that the applicant, owner, operator, tenant, and/or user has no entitlement to the future reapproval of the interim use permit, as well as agreeing that the interim use will not impose additional costs on the public if it is necessary for the public to fully or partially take the property in the future?
We'll answer this, and we missed one. We'll go back.
Did I miss one?
That's right. We'll
I'm
go through this
sorry.
one first, and then we'll go back. So staff responded, yes, signed consent agreement is a condition of the approval of the request. It is not anticipated that the public will need to take the property in the future, and there are no changes to the existing home that would warrant additional construction.
I'm getting my eyes checked tomorrow. Will there be provided adequate utilities, access, roads, drainage, and necessary facilities?
Staff responded, yes, there are adequate utilities and access to the property. There's no change to the property that would require additional services.
Everybody still in agreement?
Agree.
Okay. Will the use cause or impose additional costs to the city of New Ulm?
Staff responded, no, the use will not incur additional costs to the city of New Ulm.
Agreement?
Agree.
Yes.
Will the interim use adhere to any applicable additional criteria outlined in section 2.4E8 for the proposed use?
Yes, a recommended condition of the interim use permit is that the use complies with all those criteria in section 2.4E8.
Okay. And we all agree?
Agree.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Kokesh, have you thought of your second question?
I got it all covered, thank you.
Okay. I do have one question. I'm going to assume that there's a health criteria attached to this that is being met and that there's restroom facilities and things for people?
Daniel McKinley, 1121 South Minnesota. There is a restroom on that level. There's running water.
Okay.
There's a separate entrance. So those are the only standards that I'm aware of that usually apply to massage type businesses.
That was my only question. Thank you. If there are no other questions, and we've accepted the finding of facts form as presented, I would entertain a motion, if I can.
Motion to recommend approval with conditions, the interim use permit application of David McKinley on behalf of Samantha Whitaker to allow the operation of myofascial release therapy business on the property located in the RT2 zoning district on property legally described as Lot 9, Block 54, south of Center Street.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just want to clarify that we're not including an additional parking condition. They're the recommended conditions in the staff report.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This appears when before the council?
This goes to the city council next Tuesday, March 4th at 4:30 PM.
Good. Thank you very much. Closes the public hearing portion of the McKinley Whitaker. I am opening the public hearing portion of the Marty Comprehensive Plan Amendment.
Okay, the purpose of the public hearing is to consider a change to the land use category for the property legally described in Exhibit 1, and that's from low-density residential and medium-density residential to high-density residential. And this is a change in the comprehensive plan. The applicant and property owner is Keith Marty. As I indicated, the legal description is identified in Exhibit 1. There are two parts to the legal description. The street address is 901 North Highland Avenue. The property is generally located southeast of the New Ulm High School, northwest of the Kids Excel Center, west of North Highland Avenue, between 8th and 11th North Streets. Deadline for a decision on this matter is April 13th, 2025. The surrounding land uses, according to the comprehensive plan, to the north we have public, semi-public, low-density residential, and medium-density residential. To the east is low-density residential, as is to the west. To the south we have commercial, low-density residential, and then parks and open space. The zoning designation is AOS, which is agricultural open space. To the north, it's INSE, which is institutional education district, and then AOS. To the east, it's R3, which is medium-density residence district, and R1, single-family residence district. To the south, it's R1, and to the west, it is AOS. Current site use, the property is being farmed. Area land uses to the north is being farmed, and New Ulm High School is located. To the east, we have twin homes and single-family homes. To the south, we have a daycare center and single-family homes. And to the west, we have farmed property. Notice was provided to all property owners within 350 feet of the subject property on February 14th, 2025, and published in the Journal on February 15th, 2025. Staff has received 2 inquiries regarding this proposal. Both were by phone, and I would characterize both as being informational, wanting to know a little bit further about what is being proposed.
He's having trouble hearing you.
Yeah, okay. We have utilities located in North Highland Avenue. The comprehensive plan does not designate a park within the amendment area. As far as the project description goes, the subject property has a total area of 10.2 acres. The property has been farmed in the past and is currently being farmed. The property as a legal description of part of outlots 194, 195, 196, and 197. And those outlots were platted as part of the original town plat in 1858. The property is being proposed for development by Steve Keepers, architects and builders. The proposed project would involve the construction of 4 three-story apartment buildings, 8 detached garage groups, along with a pool, children's playground, dog park, parking lots, stormwater ponds, and the extension of 10th North Street from North Highland Avenue to the west. Each building is proposed to have 36 apartment units with a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units. The project would be constructed in 2 phases. So there would be a total of 144 units being proposed for the property. Purpose of the comprehensive plan. The New Ulm Comprehensive Plan is an official statement by the New Ulm City Council that describes the community's shared vision, goals, and objectives for future growth and development. The plan's recommendations provide guidance for the city's priorities, growth, investments, and development over the next 20 years. As a guide to development, it is intended to be a flexible and responsive document that can be amended to acknowledge changing conditions and new opportunities. The comprehensive plan was adopted by the City Council in June of 2024. The plan should be reviewed and updated at a minimum every 2 years. Some important definitions that apply to this particular request. The first is low-density residential. You'll also see in the report that it's abbreviated to LDR. That includes a range of that includes single-family detached housing, twin homes, duplexes, along with directly related complementary uses. The density range for this category is 1 to 10 units per acre. Medium-density residential, or MDR, includes a range of housing types such as single-family detached and attached housing, twin homes, townhomes, duplexes, row houses, and moderate-density multifamily housing consisting of attached and detached housing units. Directly related complementary uses are also permitted. The density range for this category is 1 to 12 units per acre. The final definition is high-density residential, or HDR. This includes higher density multifamily housing, including apartment buildings and condominiums, with separately divided living units. Directly related complementary uses are also permitted. The density range for this category is between 9 and 21 units per acre. So comprehensive plan questions regarding amendments. There are 2 of them. The first is, does the proposed change generally comply with the identified criteria found in the findings of fact form? You'll note in your report that it references a section in this report which has been removed. The second question is this an appropriate location for high-density residential land uses, given the surrounding comprehensive plan land use designations? There are a number of attachments, and I believe John will display them on the video monitor. Attachment 1 is the petition, including a site plan showing the location of the property where the comp plan designation would be changed. Exhibit 1 shows the legal descriptions. There are 2 of them. One is for the low-density property. The other is for the medium-density property. Attachment 3 is a comprehensive plan amendment information, and we will review that in greater detail once we complete the staff report. Attachment 4 is a site location map. Attachment 5 is a site location map with future comprehensive plan land uses shown. Attachment 6 is a site plan, that's an aerial photo. Attachment 7 is a site map with future land uses. Attachment 8 is a zoning map. Attachment 9 is City of New Ulm development barriers. And we will come back to attachment 9 later on. Attachment 10 is a high-density land use areas. That's throughout the city of New Ulm. Attachment 11 identifies medium-density land use areas throughout the city. Attachment 12 are ground-level photos. You will see a lot of photographs that look very similar since we're dealing with a comparatively flat piece of property. And then attachment 13 is the findings of fact form and the staff's response to that. Staff would recommend approval of the amendment of the comprehensive plan land use categories from low-density residential and medium-density residential to high-density residential. The reasons for this recommendation can be found in attachment 13, which is the findings of fact form. Recommended conditions, the first is that the owner applicant will pay the cost to record necessary documents with the Brown County Recorder's Office. And the second is that amendment of the land use categories are subject to the approval of a planned unit development zoning designation for the subject property. Then there are two motions provided. One is to recommend approval, and the second is to recommend denial. Okay. At this time, I would like to go through attachment 3. And this is attachment addresses kind of the amendment and some issues associated with that. The first piece of information that we want to talk about is New Ulm's unique location and the development barriers that the city of New Ulm faces. And if you look at the attachment that John has up, I'm not going to be telling you anything that you don't already know. We have two rivers. Rivers have floodplains and also topographic issues. We've got the New Ulm Municipal Airport and its safety zones. And then we also have Flanders State Park and the New Ulm Country Club. These location considerations are both natural and man-made, but what they do is they effectively direct community growth to the northwest and to the southwest. And we'll refer to that as the growth area. Growth in other directions is generally not possible due to cost or the amount of time necessary to construct necessary infrastructure. Now, it's always possible to cross a river, but it's very expensive to do so. We can cross the airport property, but that's expensive as well. So there's a number of factors that impact where the city can grow. Now, within the comprehensive plan, in 2024, we designated, excuse me, 87 acres for future high-density residential housing. And this was 1.33% of the city's total future land area. Now, of that amount, the only vacant acres within the city that were designated, there were two areas. One was 13.6 acres that generally was in the area that's bounded by South German Street, 7th South Street, the railroad tracks, and 12th South Street. Ridgeway on German is located in that area. And this site is characterized by issues such as site access, lack of utilities. We have wetlands in the area. There are soil issues and other water issues. And then the second site that is identified is 7.62 acres. That's designated for the pending River Haven project, and that's at 1600 North Highland Avenue. And we've talked about that in the past. The remainder of the property that has a high-density residential category consists of existing developed properties. So those are other apartment buildings that have a density standard that would place them in the high-density residential category. The comprehensive plan also designates 85 acres for future medium-density residential, so that's MDR, and that makes up 1.3% of the city's total future land area. Of this amount, the vacant areas within the city, with one exception, are all located within the growth area that we have identified. This land area, so this is vacant property, totals 34.14 acres. The remainder of the property in this land use category consists of property outside the city limits, so that would require annexation and the extension of utilities. In preparing the comprehensive plan, the staff noted that the growth area would need to accommodate all forms of residential housing from low density to high density. And so we view this area as kind of being a mixed-use residential area. On average, the city has experienced the development of a high-density residential property or project once every 5 years. Now, in some instances, you'll find projects, 1 year after each other, but in other instances, it's sometimes gone 10 years between projects. And we went all the way back to 1971 and kind of carried it forward from that point in time. And so that for that reason, we didn't designate a lot of property for high-density residential because we didn't want the property to sit there and not have the prospect of being used. And so instead what we did is we designated more property for medium-density residential because there's a greater number of uses that property could be used for. But the other thing is that we also, through an amendment, could take that property and elevate it to a high-density residential designation, which is what we are proposing to do here. The next item that I'd like to talk about is the comprehensive plan survey results that we received. We had over 2,400 participants that provided input to the city's comprehensive plan project. As part of this project, participants noted that there were limited housing options for different budgets and needs, And we received this information via surveys. Another statement that that was made was that there was a consensus that increasing the availability and types of housing was an important community goal. Another was that apartments, multifamily dwellings were rated the second highest housing need in the city with 49.2% of the vote. The highest vote was affordable housing at 52.8%. So, going through the comprehensive plan process, there was strong emphasis on developing housing within the community. Market factors. High construction and material costs make it challenging for builders to deliver new single-family homes for less than $300,000. Depending upon the contractor that you talk to, that number can even be higher. Therefore, an additional housing option that we need to look at to accommodate future growth is to grow vertically with apartments. In October of 2022, the New Ulm Economic Development Authority commissioned a comprehensive housing needs analysis for New Ulm, and it was conducted by the Maxfield Research Group. And they found that at that time that the city had a rental vacancy rate of 0.8%. And the rental vacancy rates were low across all rental prices, and there was high demand for additional units at all income levels. Industry standards indicate a healthy rental housing vacancy rate to be 5%. So we're well below that, or were at that time. That vacancy rate would indicate that there's a pent-up demand for additional units at all income levels. New Ulm's population and number of households both grew by 4% between 2010 and 2020, and the trend is expected to continue to grow with another 3.5% increase in population and 4% increase in households from 2020 to 2030. The housing study also projected future housing demand or housing need, and that indicated that from 2022 to 2030 that we should add 364 what I'll call general occupancy units. And for senior housing, between 2022 and 2027, it was estimated that there was a need for another 440 additional units. And you add the two up and you come up with approximately 800 units. Other considerations are that New Ulm lacks housing for people who want to move here. The low vacancy rate at recently constructed market rate apartments indicates a strong demand for rental housing, and expanding rental options for seniors may help them transition out of single-family homes that can then be opened up to the larger population. The comprehensive plan has a number of goals and opportunities that were listed. I would just like to identify some of them. One is that we should identify and promote sites that could attract the development of new market rate rental housing. Two, that we would locate high-density development at appropriate locations throughout the city, provided they are compatible with adjacent land uses and existing planned street systems. Three, a mix of housing options was viewed as a function that would be most influential in stimulating economic growth and or land development over the next 20 years. And then four, the city should play an active role in expanding housing options that meet a wide range of needs, including budget, size, and type. Next item that I would like to talk about are traffic volumes. The city engineer has reviewed the proposed plans for the project and has provided the following remarks on projected traffic volumes generated by the project. He said North Highland Avenue was constructed as a major arterial for the city, and looking into the future, it can accommodate additional traffic loads as the city expands. North Highland Avenue can accommodate the additional traffic being generated by the project upon its completion. North Highland Avenue is designed, if traffic volumes warrant, to be turned into 4 lanes of traffic. The city engineer does not believe the additional traffic generated from this project would warrant any changes to the roadway. Then finally, reasons to amend the comprehensive plan include that, the comprehensive plan is a flexible document. And so changes that would be considered by this type of request, we believe fall within that particular area. The real estate market, construction costs, and needs of the community periodically experience shifts, and that certainly has happened recently. As such, it's important to have some flexibility in your land use designations and decisions, since you need to be able to react to those situations. The land use category of high-density residential would, in staff's opinion, be compatible with the abutting business land use to the south, to the currently vacant medium-density residential area to the north, and the low-density residential vacant area to the west. Low-density residential is also sited to the east, but there is approximately 255 feet from the proposed apartment building face to the single-family building face on the other side of North Highland Avenue. And staff believes that that distance would provide adequate separation from the high-density residential uses. Now, there are, we've also identified similar distances between the existing New Ulm apartment buildings and surrounding residential properties. So it's the same type of measurement that was made where we go from building face of the apartment to building face of adjoining residential units. So with Garden Terrace 1 and the residences on North Garden Street, 150 feet. Linderhof Park Apartments to residents on North Payne Street, 135 feet. Linderhof Park Apartments to 17th North Street or residents there, 235 feet. German Heights Townhomes to South German Street, 138 feet. Emerson Union to First North Street, 134. Then finally, Highland Regency to Sunset Avenue. There's 2 different measurements there. One is 147 feet and the other is 185 feet. Since 1971, the city has had 11 apartment projects that had a total unit count in each exceeding 40. The comprehensive plan's HDR category has a density range of 9 to 21 units per acre. The proposed apartment project would have 15.96 units per acre. And if you compared it to the other units that have been built in the city, of those 11 projects, 9 had density ranges that were higher than the one that is proposed for this property. Since 1960, the city has seen the construction of 24 apartment buildings. Of those 24, 5 have a lower per acre amount than the proposed project, but 19 have a higher density rate than this proposed project. The project will involve the construction of 3-story buildings, which will fit with the height of the surrounding properties. The site can handle the city's stormwater requirements for a project of this size. The city's ability to accommodate a project of this size is limited, though, to certain locations in the northwestern and southwestern part of the community. There is within the community a demonstrated need for more housing. We have an extremely low vacancy rate. The proposed design of the project would place the apartments in the middle of the property. The garage and parking areas would be on the periphery, and that type of design would insulate the apartment buildings from other surrounding land uses. And then finally, the density, the upper density for a medium density property is 12 units. And the proposed project would have 15.96 or 16 units. And so that's a separation of 4 units per acre, which, is fairly close. Do you have anything to present at this time?
I can show the concept presented by the developer for the audience. Maybe we could ask the developer to come up and just provide a little insight on what he's proposing here and how his concept lays out.
No. Please state your name and address, please.
Hi, Steve. Let's get it up higher. Steve Keepers, Brainerd, Minnesota, 17018 Commercial Park Road. Little background on us. We're a family-run business, 50 years old actually in 2024. We started doing exclusively multifamily about 2016, started doing them in the late 90s. Started in communities just like New Ulm, looking for county seat, a lot of what the people in the metro call outstate communities. Brainerd, Baxter, Grand Rapids, Bemidji, Duluth, Thief River Falls, Fergus Falls, Alexandria, and we just started migrating our way south. About 6-7 years ago, we did the project in Hutchinson that's over by Menards, right behind Applebee's and the Quick Trip. There's 5 buildings over there. The 2 that are closest to the Quick Trip are identical pretty much to what's getting proposed here. We've kind of adopted a style on how we like to lay these things out. We've got a really nice compact building. So each one of the buildings is 36 units, 3 stories, have an elevator. They each have a community room. They each have an exercise room. On the 3rd floor, we do a little library. People always ask me, who's living in the apartments, and it'll pretty much exactly match whatever the demographics are for the city that we've done it in. But the little libraries on the 3rd floor are really popular with the more senior set, puzzles, meetings, coffee groups. We'll have an office on site in one of the buildings for a resident manager. That's where all the leasing, maintenance requests, general supervision come from. Common outside amenities. We're really big, and David started talking about, we're really big on creating a courtyard area. We'd like to have the green space between the 4 buildings, and then in the center, we're proposing an outdoor swimming pool. We've been messing around with outdoor pickleball courts lately in some of the developments. For this one, we're proposing the pool. This isn't a real good shot of it, but there's a outside playground area. Yeah, if you can. That's what the buildings look like. So a couple of outdoor playground areas for the kids, Again, back to the courtyard, and then you see the sidewalks connecting everything. Usually around the playgrounds, we'll do benches. We'll also incorporate like grill areas and have picnic tables for people to use. Again, the green space courtyard area with the pool, with the playground, it keeps kids from running into the parking lots, keeps people out of the parking lots, traveling across. The detached garage parking is rented separately. What we found is that we do, we'll do about half of the, so it's 144 units, and there'll be roughly, I can't remember the exact number, but it'll be like 72, 73 garage stalls. What we find there is that people then actually use the garage stalls for parking, they don't use them for storage, versus if you have a lot more garages, and then it just starts to look like a mini storage development, not a housing development. David talked about heights. We've already talked to the city somewhat about that. We've been working on the setbacks to keep the heights down, or to keep the impact of the height of the buildings down. What was the exact height to the peak again? I forget. 45, I thought, or something. but-
45 is the max.
Yeah, 45 was the max. There's a little pool building by the pool, the outdoor pool. They'll have a couple of restrooms in it and house the pool equipment. The private decks on each one of these things, they have central air. It's called a Magic Pack system. You can see the little vents actually right in there. So each one of the units has its own central air. David talked about it's 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms. About a third of the project will be 1 bedroom, 1 bath. The other 2/3 of the project is 2 bedrooms. Out of that, about 15% of the 2 bedrooms are actually 2 bedroom, 2 baths, which kind of allows for, like roommate situations, those kind of things. Private decks on each one of them. We try to do storage, laundry. Right now, we're still debating on whether or not we're going to do a common laundry on the second floor. We do really nice, and actually it's about a room about the size of this room for common laundry, or we may do laundry inside the units. We haven't decided on that yet. We're still batting it around. Yeah, the outside of the project, we kind of vary it up with different types of siding, both lap siding, shakes, and board and batten, and then we try to put a healthy amount of stone on it as well. Sure. We have done probably about 56, 57 of this exact building in a lot of different communities. Again, like I said, the 2 buildings in Hutchinson match this really close. We just did a project in Mankato on 14, just north of Menards and Fleet Farm. There's a couple of buildings there that match this as well. Try to keep the landscaping healthy to break up the sight lines, help with privacy. Photometrics, we'll end up turning all that in when we do the actual, really heavy on keeping all the lighting down, keeping any light pollution away from the neighbors. Go ahead.
I have a question about market rate, low
Yeah.
income. What's the breakdown, if there is a breakdown?
There isn't a breakdown, it's all market rate.
Market rate.
Rents are gonna be anywhere. On this one, I mean, I can broadly say, like, there's actually a studio unit in each one of the buildings. You're probably looking at 900, and I would guess, depending on when this gets delivered online, depending on what the economy's doing, rents really shot up lately, so I hate to say it, but you're probably looking at, this will probably range from 1,000 to like 2,250 a month. And in addition to that, there's a surcharge for utilities that goes into that, so they're not the cheapest things in the world, I'll admit that, but we do take care of a lot of things for you that you don't have to do when you have a house.
Are there any questions for him while he's up there?
Where's the dog park at?
Oh, you work your, it's in the back. Yeah, so this is Highland now. We've switched around and we're looking at it facing east, and the dog park's back in here by the parking lot. So what we do for the dog parks is, it's a big green space that we fence in, and then we have the poop bags and all that kind of stuff. And we do allow pets on a project like this, but we've got it's kind of complicated, but you have to register your pet, and if your pet poops in the yard, we can find out it's your pet. Believe it or not, before you move in, you have to turn in your dog stuff and they do a DNA on it and we know it's your dog.
I understand. That's a big concern in the
It
neighborhood.
works
though.
great. Nobody steps in poop bombs.
Yeah.
I missed where the entry is, what street?
So
That's a
Please
good
repeat the
'cause
question
That was
for
my
me.
next question, yeah.
Andrea Ziski, 1433 9th Street North. I'm curious, I can't tell where it's coming in off of Highland.
Or
Like where the
7th.
main entry.
Is the entrance on Highland or 7th?
On Highland.
I missed.
Maybe we might have to flip back to one of the aerial photos to better show that, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
because that was one of my questions also, was where was the entrance?
I'll just go up a couple here.
Thank you.
Here, this might be the best one.
So what we did was Highland's all built out and there's road approaches right across from 9th North and right across from 10th. And so what we wanted to do was, so we didn't have to disrupt everything from Highland, and Dave did a very good job of explaining the challenges of finding a spot to build something like this in New Ulm, which, by the way, I've been looking on and off for about 5-6 years. Your water and sewer and the way everything was constructed, both these approaches off of Highland were for future streets or what have you. So what we did is we incorporated an entrance right across from 9th, and then we are proposing to build 10th down to roughly this area with an exit onto the newly constructed 10th. The cars are predominantly going to be able to go up to Highland right across from 10th and right across from 9th.
On 9th, because there's, coming into our neighborhood, it's like the main entrance coming in and it's already busy when it's being used.
I defer to your guys as road engineers, so.
Right, we assumed this question would come up, and we had talked to the city manager about concerns with traffic. So generally in that area, there's around 3,800 cars per day. This project could potentially provide another maybe 400 more vehicles per day. That being said, as I'm sure you're aware, it's 7:30 to 8 o'clock are extremely busy, and then also from when school lets out till maybe 4:30 or something like that, it's also extremely busy. Assuming that these would be people that are living, working in the area, it could mean, and with the amount of industry we have in New Ulm, we would assume that not all the traffic would be leaving at exactly the same time, like the students are going to the high school, so it could disperse that traffic a little bit more. But yes, there will be more traffic added.
Is anything going to change on the intersection? Just 'cause Dewey's, their street at.
No.
Can you step up to the microphone so the whole audience can hear the answer to your question?
Sorry. So what I've found with that intersection is there's those, because it's the only through street, somebody will have their blinker on and then they're just turning to do a U-E to go back towards 10th to get into, like, if they're going into 10th Street or 11th. I just am concerned with knowing where everyone's going and across the street and those coming from that way, turning and without any, I don't want to say round, like, I don't know, it just seems a little concerning with trying to zip out.
Which way does your driveway face?
The 10th Street is not a through street, and would the
No.
city change that into a through street, being that the development is planning to build out? That would be a question for the city.
Well, that would be a question for the city engineer, but
Yeah.
at this point in time, I don't think they contemplate that taking place.
Okay.
I guess that was just my concern, is the
I understand.
traffic aspect of coming out of both directions and having to, it's already kind of tough to skip out and go left. now and then with others going right and having to get that all timed out, so.
Is it high school people going down and whipping you?
Not necessarily the high school. It's probably neighborhood. It's people in it. I guess it could be high school too. Like if I leave late at 3 to go get the kids and the high school kids have already left, it's just like a nonstop, which I get it. It's that time of day, but just to get out and then if somebody's got their blinker on and then they're.
These neighbors going back to get up to 10.
Yes. Yep. And our street's already busy because otherwise they'll come down our street to get into all their other spots because they can't get in depending on which way they're, coming into their neighborhood. So we just have a very busy street in general, but not that this would affect people going down our street, I guess. Just with kids, I guess it's a busy street in general, but I don't think this project would necessarily cause our street to be more busy, just potentially getting off of our.
Mankato, we were on the back end of a development that was already done behind us. It's Augusta and 14th. MnDOT put a roundabout in, but they did it after everything else had kind of filled in behind it. It was all pushing out. So maybe that's something that happens.
Is there any chance of putting an access on 7th so that some of that traffic gets deferred out?
Yeah, that's a question that, for the city
For the city?
engineer.
Okay. Appreciate your concern. Thank you. Does the city have any other reports to offer? Otherwise, I'm going to open it up to the commission and the audience again. Does the commission have any straightforward questions?
I've got a question. Could we put up I know this isn't site plan kind of review stuff, but if you put up the one 3D image of all of the buildings, it was that one there. So I'm assuming that street to the lower left there, that's Highland, correct? No, down, that one there. That's 10th?
This will be the newly constructed 10.
Oh,
Okay.
That's 9th right here. That's your 9th going through right here.
So that's also an exit, or would most be coming out, and that's only if 10th gets built out?
10th is we're proposing to build 10th out with the development.
Okay.
And so we have an entrance here, and an entrance onto Highland.
I was
across from
assuming
9th.
that main road was the only.
Can we please use the microphones?
I'm just commenting out loud.
You have a screen there. Can you see that screen?
Well, or could we get you to maybe move up and
Yeah.
would that
'cause
make
there's
it?
a screen here also, if you want to sit
I
up
think they're
front.
just wanting to see which roads, maybe because they couldn't see you showing.
yeah.
Yes.
That's the 9th Street, yeah.
And the road approaches are there now. Yeah. It's real easy to see where that's going to be.
Okay, so initially I hadn't noticed that there was multiple exits and entrances in. I was assuming that 10th Street was coming in on 9th and then going in from there.
No.
So that seems a little more feasible.
Go ahead, Bill.
The view as we travel down Highland, if this project is built out as we see it, is going to be the ends of those two units, those two buildings. Okay, and probably drive between them or something.
Yeah, unfortunately, it only
can't do
expands
anything.
on this. Yes. There is no driveway between the four buildings. The only driveway I see is around the whole periphery of the project. Is that correct?
Correct.
You cannot drive through the center.
No, you can't drive in between the buildings.
Those are walking paths. Yeah.
Right, but, so there'll be, what you'll see on Highland is
Yeah.
end of building, driveway, row of trees, and then sidewalk.
Right.
Okay.
Can you flip it so you can see it from Highland rather than looking back on Highland?
Maybe. There you go.
So this is,
Oh,
so this
Perfect.
is Highland. Here, you guys in the back, so on the right, the double road, that's Highland. So that's 9th right there. where the through.
Driveways.
And then that's 10th up at the top, and you can see the median in between blocking it. And then what that's also showing is that's showing what our proposed landscaping is along Highland. No. That'd be back, yeah, that's back there.
This is going to teach you all to sit in the front of church.
That's why I didn't want to sit over there. They'd never be able to see me.
Where's Kids Excel under?
That'll be right down over right in there. Yeah.
Y'all look like you're thinking greatly. Does anyone have a question that they want to share so that the audiovisual man can get it on his recording? No? Did you get your question yet?
Yep, I'm good, thank you.
Commissioners? Questions? I do want to ask the city, I mean, not everyone on this panel or this commission has sat through the comprehensive plan. And I remember that this is the biggest struggle that we had was where we were going to put affordable housing. And I think I attended most of the meetings. And one of the main goals that we had was that we needed some housing out by the airport. That was where we only decided there was land, and I guess we designated this R1 and R2 because we had the River Bluff whatever apartment building that was down the street that was proposed, but kind of in limbo, and we still needed, according to the city studies that had been done independently, more public housing besides just that area. Is that correct?
Yeah. The study that was done in 2022 forecasted, approximately 800 units.
Yeah.
And that was split between senior and then general occupancy. So the project that you're referring to was 118 units. Mm-hmm. Now, there also is, a project proposed downtown, the former Georgia site, and that's about 80 units. Mm-hmm. But we're still not.
That comes to about half of the demand.
Yeah, we're not close to, what was projected. Okay. And I might note that Maxfield Research Group is, well-known in the state of Minnesota, and it does studies like this, all the time.
And I'm familiar with their developments in Becker and in Hutchinson, and so they're all neat. I didn't see any disruption. I mean, sometimes but they're all fairly new also, so they were nice-looking apartment buildings anyway. Are we ready to move to the finding of facts? Does anybody in the audience wish to say anything before I move on? Could you please step up to the mic and state your name and address, please?
Al Paler for S&P Development, Cortland, Minnesota, 519 Valley View Drive. I invested in the city back in 2017. I bought the EDA project, the land out there. Mm-hmm. We did a lot of extensive research to see, again, with Dave's help, to see what they needed for housing and stuff. And what I liked was the area that, which is off of 7th, that we bought was surrounded by the mix of low density and medium density housing. To me, to go from a low density to a high density is, it's a grasp, in my opinion. As you stated, the comprehensive plans are the road, it's a roadmap for the city, but, we have changes. I came in 2017. We changed from what the EDA was doing to my twin homes and stuff, so I thank the city for that. And the buildings look fantastic. I'm not sure where, you know, you talk about how they fit in with setback, excuse me, setbacks of 150 or 200 feet, what it is. I think it's more the view from the people that I see in my neighborhood and have been talking is, yeah, the buildings look nice, but they're high, you know, and they like seeing the high school. And I don't know the impacts. I've seen the Hutch projects and everything. I mean, yeah, they look fantastic. I just don't know. I haven't seen it yet if people are going to say, well, there's apartments around, you know, we don't want to be that close, because unfortunately, sometimes apartments have negative to them because they think it's low income or something, but these are going to be, you know, really nice. I do agree with the other audience member on the traffic. I think the city will have to look at that with, I mean, I drive that a lot, and it is busier certain times of the day, but there'll be a lot going on there. I want to protect my investment. I have 30-some lots there, and I'd like to see more. You know, hopefully the residential goes in. I don't know if I would buy right behind this property then if it was ever for sale to go into that. I know the land is an issue on trying to fit these in. So just stating a few concerns that the city really looks at this with such, I call it a drastic change when you go from low density to high density. I think, you know, is this, I don't know how long you've been working on this. I don't know the backside, you know, should there be an environmental or an impact study done? The comprehensive plan was just finished in 2024. There was no notations, you know, I mean, you have your statistics, but should you have looked more at, I think it'd be easier if at that time some of this area is maybe earmarked better. But as Dave stated, once you earmark it, that may change the way someone else looks at it. So I guess I don't have the definite answer. Just wanted to state my concerns. Hopefully I can protect what I have there and also keep working with the city. So thank you.
Thank you for your concerns. Noted. Anyone else? Go ahead. That's what we're here for.
Andrea at 1433 9th again. My question is too on property value. How, I don't really know how this type of thing affects being so close to my property value as well. Does anybody have any statistics on that? I don't know. Other places that have had apartments come in near their homes.
You step a little closer to the microphone.
Just curious on the how it affects the cost of our properties after apartments come in close.
I'm going to turn to the city.
Well, no one's on staff as an appraiser, and so we're probably not qualified to, comment on that. I do know that, I was here when we did the Garden Terrace projects, and we heard a lot of the same concerns expressed at that time. And I think if you look at, the residents across the street from there, I don't see where there's been any change. They're well maintained. There's people living in them. So I
agree.
I guess, ultimately an appraiser would have to
And
say
the
that.
only thing I can say from personal experience is I have family members that have lived or that live across the alley from Linderhof and Hillside Apartments, and those are low income housing, not market rate housing. So there is a difference. And their values have not dropped, and they have had no problems with the residences or concerns with the residents. I don't know if that helps you now, but I'm just stating what is. So. I'm not going to open public hearing or the finding of facts until I make sure everybody has had their say. Are you all okay? Okay, we're going to go on to finding of facts. Is that all right with you, John, or do you have other? Oh, Dave, I guess, is conducting this. Are you ready?
Not yet. Okay.
Finding of facts, a comprehensive plan amendment request to change the comprehensive plan designation for property legally described in Exhibit Number 1 from low-density residential and medium residential, density residential to high-density residential. First question, does the proposed amendment correct an error or address a need resulting from a changing condition, trend, or fact arising since the adoption of the comprehensive plan?
The staff's response was yes. The current City of New Ulm comprehensive plan was adopted in 2024 and designates this property as low-density residential and medium-density residential. Since 2015, there have been an average of 21 new single-family homes constructed in the community. The amount of new construction of housing units has not kept up with the demand for housing. In 2022, a New Ulm housing needs analysis found vacancy rates for market rate and subsidized rentals at less than 1%. A 5 to 7% vacancy rate is considered to be healthy for a community. In addition to low numbers for available housing units, the costs of new construction has increased substantially over the past few years, making it difficult for people to afford new homes. There is little high-density residential land use area designated in the 2024 comprehensive plan, and those areas so designated have been developed or are outside the city's growth area to the northwest.
Do we agree or comments?
Agree.
Agree.
Thank you. Is the proposed amendment consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan?
Okay, the answer was yes. Housing goal number 2 is to increase the quantity and diversity of housing types that meet the community's current and future needs. Strategy 2.2 is to identify and promote sites that could attract development of new market rate rental housing. According to the 2022 housing needs analysis, the city's vacancy rate for rental dwellings is well below what is considered healthy, 5 to 7%. Due to the cost of construction of new single-family housing and the current pace of development of these homes, it is unlikely that single-family housing construction will meet the demand for housing units in the community in the future. The site being considered is a location where high-density housing could be placed as it's adjacent to a major street, North Highland Avenue, and has adjoining land uses that would not be in conflict with the proposed use. Another goal, housing goal number 2, is to increase the quantity and diversity of housing types that meet the community's current and future needs. Strategy 2.7 is to locate high-density development at appropriate locations throughout the city, provided they are compatible with adjacent land uses and the existing and planned street pattern. Staff's response to that is that the proposed location for high-density residential land uses is situated adjacent to a major street, south of the New Ulm High School and north of the Kids Excel Center. The undeveloped land area between the proposed development and the high school would remain medium-density residential and low-density residential, providing a logical transition between area land uses.
Comments or agreement?
Agree.
Agree.
Thank you. Does the proposed amendment address a community need?
The answer is yes. In the 2022 New Ulm Housing Needs Analysis, vacancy rates for market rate and subsidized rentals were less than 1%. The city is estimated to see a growth rate of 4% between 2020 and 2030 and add an estimated 600 people. Designating additional land use area as high-density residential could provide more rental housing units and address the need for sufficient housing to accommodate the city's estimated growth through 2030.
Agreement?
Agree.
Agree.
Will the proposed amendment provide a public benefit and protect the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the public?
Staff's answer was yes. The proposed amendment will facilitate the development of additional housing, which will provide a community benefit. Adequate housing is an essential component in protecting the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the public.
Agreement?
Agree.
Agree.
Will there be negative impacts on the natural and built environments, including air, water, noise, stormwater management, wildlife habitat, water quality, vegetation, drainage, street, or other engineering design or environmental factors?
Staff's answer was yes. It is not anticipated that the project will have a negative impact on those items listed above. Currently, the site is being farmed. Stormwater from the site will be directed to the stormwater pond already located in adjoining North Highland Avenue. Streets abutting the property are designed to be able to handle the traffic expected to be generated from the site. There are no sensitive or unique environmental features on the property.
I have one question for you on that. Stormwater runoff, and I see that it's all directed toward Highland, and in most projects, we look at some sort of retention pond because, and I know that was the big deal on the project we looked at last. Are we sure that this does not have to have any retention or slope?
No, it will have to have a stormwater pond on site and
It
have
will.
on-site treatment before it goes into the stormwater in Maine in Highland. And I think currently the proposal is back in this corner behind the dog park.
I think there are multiple pond sites, if I'm not mistaken. If you look at the site,
Might be these three in light green.
yeah.
Okay. My question, that satisfies my question. Okay, we're on number 6, right? Well, does anybody else have questions, or do we agree?
Agree.
Agree.
Will the proposed amendment be compatible with existing and proposed uses surrounding the subject property?
Staff's answer was yes. The location of high-density housing will be north of an existing daycare facility and south of the New Ulm High School campus. Across North Highland Avenue to the east, there is a low-density residential land use area. The proposed project is approximately 250 feet from the nearest single-family residence. The site plan indicates that there will be detached accessory garages to the north and south, which should provide an additional buffer between this site and adjoining properties.
Are we in agreement?
I have a question on that. If we could see the existing comp plan designations, the question runs along the line of that one there, yes. What's being proposed, I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but what is remnant then of the subject property? Yeah, like the MDR and all the low-density residential, you will then conceivably have in the future all of that is now a remnant low-density residential being immediately abutting high-density residential. I mean, was there any thought given to, not that this will be a popular statement, but any thought given to just changing it all to high density, or just to get the low density off of that site? I know it's a future question, but
Yeah, staff has not taken a look at the site as a whole. We have kind of focused on this particular request. I think our feeling was that the medium density that is there, that is is still appropriate and is a nice transition to the school property. The single-family area behind that, I would agree with you, is something that maybe warrants further research and consideration of maybe some land use changes as well. We do have a street that needs to go through that area, And I think that perhaps we need to identify the location of that street, and then we can start to look at maybe land use, potential land use changes.
Kind of related to that, the interim, sort of the transitional density from low, from institutional to high, you've got the medium density in between there. Would it have made sense from a site planning point of view to have moved the high density that's being proposed up to about any institutional? So then you could have medium density residential that would transition to residential around it, lower density around it. It might be site planning doesn't work that way at all, but what I'm saying is it looks at what happens to that residual piece in the future better.
Yeah, the site is going to be separated by 10th North Street, so I think we end up then with two separate parcels and perhaps two different areas of land use. This is what was presented to us, and so this is currently what we're working on. I guess that question would perhaps best be addressed to the developer.
Okay.
At that point, are we in agreement with the?
Yeah, with the current, I agree. This is just a question of the remnant, and this might not be the time to look
I
at it.
understand that. too, but-
Okay.
Agreed.
Okay. We're on 7, right? Okay, will the proposed design and land use be appropriate for the land?
The answer to that is yes. The project site is 10.2 acres in size and could accommodate up to 214 dwelling units permitted by the high-density residential land use designation. The developer's proposing 144 dwelling units, or 70 fewer units than what could be allowed on the property if the land use designation were changed to high-density residential. If the property were to remain low-density residential and medium-density residential, it could accommodate up to 120 dwelling units. The developer is proposing to set back apartments 250 feet from the nearest single-family residence, and by constructing detached garages will provide a further buffer from area properties.
Go ahead.
This is a question on, I think, the density. If I remember reading this correctly, someplace in the report, there was a reference to application coming in the future as a PUD.
That is correct.
Rather than R4 density, or R4 zoning. So what are the differences between the R4 and the PUD? What does the PUD allow that the R4 wouldn't on this site?
I believe in this particular case, the garages are in a location where our code typically would not allow them. We typically require garages to be behind the primary or permitted structure, so that would be the apartments.
Okay.
So that's one reason to go for the PUD. I think there was there was another reason, and it escapes me right now.
Was height an issue?
Nope,
There's
there's,
issues
there's.
No, they're okay
planning to
there.
be under the height. The other issue that I don't know that the developer has made a final decision on, but there will be property lines within this area, and meeting those setbacks, especially on the lines where kind of all four corners meet, might be a concern. I think they're still working through the layout to try to meet those setbacks, but that might be another reason to bring it into a PUD.
Okay. But density is not one. They could have more density with an R4 as I read that. Okay.
Is everyone okay?
Yes.
Agree? Okay. Will the proposed amendment maintain or improve compatibility among uses and ensure efficient development within the city?
Okay, we answered yes. The multifamily development being proposed will provide life cycle housing and compatibility among the uses within the project site. There are limited areas for multifamily residential housing to be developed within the city. The city is surrounded by features that can adversely impact development, including the Minnesota River, Cottonwood River, and the New Ulm Municipal Airport and safety zones. An alternative to continuing a sprawl development pattern would be to build up rather than out.
Are we in agreement?
Yes.
Agree.
Will the proposed amendment result in a logical, orderly, and predictable development pattern?
To the north of the answer to that is yes. To the north of the project site, land use designations will remain low-density residential and medium-density residential. Property to the east has already been developed, and with land uses along North Highland Avenue being low-density residential. To the west, the land use will remain low-density residential. To the south, the land uses will remain low-density residential, commercial, and parks open space. The proposed location of high-density residential land uses would provide a logical transition between the adjoining land uses.
Is everyone in agreement?
Yes.
Well, with reservation, I am in agreement. I still think that low-density residential might not be the most logical progression. I think someone in the audience mentioned as well that low density and high density immediately adjacent to each other sometimes isn't the best fit. But to the extent that that'll be addressed at some future date, I'm okay with this.
Is that low density or is an R2 multi?
R2 could be low density. I'm not sure.
It was a mix.
Yeah, we would consider R2 to be a low-density land use, yeah.
Okay.
But R2 covers more units per acre, is that correct?
No, they're all have the same acreage standards. So I believe low-density residential, which covers single-family and two-family, it's 1 to 10 units per acre.
Okay. Are we in agreement?
Yes, with that reservation.
Am I on question 10?
Yes.
Thank you. Is the proposed amendment consistent with the purpose of the zoning ordinance?
Staff answered yes. The proposed amendment and use of the property are consistent with the purpose of the zoning ordinance.
Thank you. I do have one other question, and it regards the question that the young lady had about traffic and traffic flow. And I think she was a little more at ease with 10th Street going in. But what persuades the city engineer to rethink a traffic pattern in an area?
Well, that would, I guess you'd have to ask him that question. You know, I would, I know that there has been discussion in the past about the fact that the street pattern in this area, you know, goes, there's a full intersection and then there's a partial intersection, a full intersection, partial. And the reason that that was done is because the distance between the intersections was less than a typical gridiron block. And I know the engineer at that time was concerned that that would not be a good pattern to have full intersections that close together. That might be, you know, not safe.
Okay. And the other question I have is going back to Mr. Paler, I think his name was. Is his property R2 or R1, and is it behind this or is it adjacent to it?
His property is on the other side of 7th North Street.
Okay. Okay, that was my question.
You know where Fender Park is?
Yes.
Okay, going to the west,
All
he's got,
Okay. So there is a distance between the properties?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Did I ask if we were all in agreement on number 10? Does anyone have any other questions or concerns before I close the public hearing portion of this meeting and call for a motion? If not, I'm closing the public hearing portion and calling for a motion.
Of note, I'm going to abstain from voting.
Okay.
We have a quorum
We have
without
a
him?
quorum then?
We have a quorum, and it's, if someone is not voting, then it's simply a
If someone goes
majority
to
of
simple majority.
the people that do vote makes the decision.
Well, if it's okay, I'll move to recommend approval of the comp plan amendment as outlined to us in staff. I don't know if there's any conditions that were attached or not.
There's a motion, a potential motion.
There were
on
two
page 3.
conditions that were attached.
Okay, and both of those are fine. So I would recommend, move to recommend approval with the two conditions outlined by staff.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried, and when does this appear at the council?
So this is a recommendation to the city council. City council meets next Tuesday, which is March 4th. At 4:30, this room.
Okay. I appreciate all of you attending. This closes the public hearing portion of the meeting, and we're going to go to reports. City council decisions concerning planning commission matters.
Okay. At the February 4th meeting, there were a number of items. The first is that they had the first consideration of the amendment of the lot area requirements in the I-1 zone. They had first consideration of the amendment to the temporary sign regulations. Then there was a first consideration of development standards in the I-1 zone. And that's the same thing, isn't it? That would be the same. That'd be the same item. I'm sorry. Then they approved the conditional use permit with conditions for Chad Aukus at on 3rd North Street. They approved a simple lot division for Lot 6, Block 30 North. That was 923 North Valley Street. And they authorized or entered into an agreement with Melvin Schugel regarding the former airport road and its eventual platting as 2 single-family lots. That concludes the February 4th meeting. The 18th meeting, they had first consideration of the cannabis zoning regulations, and that was approved. They had second consideration of the zoning standards in the I-1 zone, and then voted to approve that. And then they had the second consideration of the temporary sign regulations, and they denied that on a 3-0 vote. And you were at the meeting, and could you?
Essentially, the direction they gave staff was to use our existing zoning regulations to regulate those temporary signs. So in essence, we have maximum sign areas allowed on a property based in commercial areas based on the lineal frontage they have on the short side of the lot. And they said, use those regulations and make them also basically apply to temporary signs. And that's the way our ordinance is currently written. So for an example, if a lot is allowed 100 square feet of signage on the property, what we were proposing was to, in a commercial district, to allow an extra 32 square feet of temporary sign. City council gave direction, no, 100 square feet, go with that, whether it's temporary or not.
Yeah.
Is that-
I think something that staff is going to look at is to go through our ordinance and to remove anything referencing temporary signage. And then add a provision in, the City of St. Peter has a statement in which they simply say that there's no temporary signage and that all signage gets included in the total amount permitted for the property.
Is that house Center and Broadway got passed or allowed to continue to?
So Center and Broadway's in the B1 district. I think when we looked at it, they get 60 square feet, if I'm not mistaken. And I can verify that. But the way our regulations are written now, temporary or not, it's just the total amount of signage on that property.
Which varies from day to day?
Yeah.
Okay, and so it's, if you can hang a sign there, it's acceptable, no matter the number of signs?
Well, we had also asked the city attorney to take a look at adding an additional provision to more or less exempt civic or community types of signs, and they said, no, you can't. That's regulating content, so they didn't want us to put that provision into
I mean,
the
I think
regulations.
it's kind of the community bulletin board for not-for-profits, which I'm not opposed to, but I know that there's complaints about the amount of signage at that corner, so I was just wondering okay.
Well, it's fine when it's maybe 1, 2, or 3, but something like this seems to grow.
Well, okay.
And that's a lot of times where the
was
problem
kind of my
is.
concern,
I think
yeah.
we're right at that point where they're over the limit. And we did go back and look at what our regulations were prior to this zoning ordinance.
It
And in the
seems to be-
B1 zone, it was 60 square feet, so
It seems to be
we're
growing
consistent.
beyond State Street Theater, because it's the Legion and Dad's Waffles and all kinds of things, so.
Yep, and that was actually brought up at the council meeting. I think there's some people that have concerns with it. There's also a lot of people that have appreciation for knowing what's going on.
I do, yeah.
So the balance needs to be there, and currently our ordinance would allow a certain amount of signage based on the size of the lot in that zoning district.
Okay, thank you. Is that it, Dave?
That would be it, yes.
Elwood? Heritage Preservation Commission activities?
Yeah, we had one design review come forward for Soda Street for the new pottery place.
Oh, okay.
That was approved. And then we just had discussion on for the upcoming HPC fall conference and finalizing or getting our tours down for that weekend. So that was it.
I hope y'all appreciate how big a deal that really is. It attracts a nice number of people, and
Yeah, they're estimating between 175 and 200
And
people
the,
showing
and the
up.
tours are always great, no matter where you live. I've been to it so many times, and it's worthwhile.
Yeah, so that was it.
Please take part in the tours if you can.
Yeah, and make sure there's one of the tours where we actually have horse teams pulling people, and then we're going to be discussing historic houses from the outside and going inside. So that's, sign up early if you want that one. It's
Yeah.
limited.
I remember the one I've been to the Hastings, which was interesting, and Duluth was interesting, but one of the ones I found most interesting was Little Falls, and they did a tour of Ripley, which was great. But they also discussed the downtown vacant businesses and what they're doing with those spaces. And it was really innovative, and it was a good discussion, so it's great for the city. Okay. Is there any other business? If not, we stand adjourned at 6:25.